yourself. Good morning. Welcome to the Lake Chapala Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Roy Haynes, and I will be your service leader as well as coordinator of today's service. Our minister, Reverend Matt Osbaugh, is off today. We hope you enjoyed our pre-service slideshow. The featured slides were produced in 22 by the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers of the Kit Staff Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Bradenton, Washington. I know the slides were moving pretty fast during the presentation, but if you would like to read more about Black lives in UU history, please Google Black History at UU Kit Staff Unitarian Universalist Fellowship for a copy of those slides. The vocals were provided by Miss Alfreda Gerald from her album Solace. The featured song was called The Storms of Africa. Miss Gerald is the background vocalist for international recording star Yanni. David and I had the pleasure of experiencing her talents live and meeting her aboard a cruise ship to Puerto Vallarta in 2006. Today's service is part 2 of a 2-part series honoring Black History Month. Our presenters today are Trudy Crippen, Sue Kelley, Barnett, and Kathy Koches. The service today will focus on 3 visionary voices from our Black UU history past, as well as a couple of ladies that are shaping our Black UU future. Thousands of African Americans have a long relationship with Unitarian Universalism, and that work continues today. Our opening words were shared to me from Bob Koches from a Black History Month service that was held here at LCUUF in 2013. The author is anonymous. The words are as follows. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again we are not isolated beings, but connected in the mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. And with that said, I'd like to say live from Fellowship Hall, welcome to our LCUUF Sunday service. Our announcements were on a slideshow before the service. If you did not see them, please don't worry. Reverend Matt will post them on a link in tomorrow's daily sharing.
Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. Then you'll spread your wings and you'll take to the sky. But till that morning, there's nothing can harm you. with Daddy and Mommy standing by. Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich and your mama's good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Our chalice lighting words are by Passover Haggadah and were also featured in the LCUUF 2013 service. Those words are, may the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal, not harm, help, not hinder, bless, and not curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Please light your chalice.
We kindle this light in celebration for the life that we share.
Each week, we take time to remind ourselves that we are a part of a family and we belong to a community that cares for each other. We do this by sharing any significant joys or sorrows in our lives. If you have a joy or sorrow, please type it in the chat box and we will try to read aloud. First, let us voice our sorrows or concerns, whatever you may be holding on to, whatever needs some healing thoughts and caring thoughts. Please type your sorrows into the box now.
There's a concern from Donna Boros. She's concerned about friends in Texas with little water. And I'd like to add a concern for all the people suffering in Texas, northern Mexico, and other United States from the extreme cold. And that seems to be it today.
Now let us voice our joys, whatever we may be celebrating or invokes a feeling of joy or peace for yourself and others. Please type your joys into the box now.
Colleen Berry has a joy. Her mother is recovering nicely from the fall and ankle sprain. Blessed that she has children and caregivers to support her 24/7. And I'd like to add a joy for the 5,000 sea turtles that were rescued by Texans, even though they were in the freezing cold. And that seems to be it.
Now let us light a care candle that represents all of those sorrows that are too raw, too difficult to us to share aloud. So many of us have had losses of partners, children, grandchildren, losses that remain with us every day. So many of us have burdens, anger, fear, and frustration. All of those things that weigh heavy on our hearts. We light this candle for all of those unspoken sorrows.
I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. You used to rock me in the cradle of your arms. You said you'd hold me till the pains of life were gone. You said you'd comfort me in times like these, and now I need you, and now I need you, and you are gone. So I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Since you've gone and left me, there's been so little beauty, but I know I saw clearly through your eyes. Now the world outside is such a cold and bitter place. Here inside I have few things that will console. And when I try to hear your voice above the storms of life, then I remember that I was told. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I think all the things that made me feel so wonderful when I was young. I think all the things that made me laugh, made me dance, made me sing. I think all the things that made me grow into a being full of pride. I think on these things, for they are true. And I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I thought that you were gone, but now I know you're with me. You are the voice that whispers all I need to hear. I know a please and thank you and a smile will take me far. I know that I am you and you are me and we are one. I know that who I am is numbered in each grain of sand. I know that I've been blessed again and over again. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes.
This is the time in our service that we ask you to remember that we share our gifts through pledging and donations. We are not meeting in person now, but our connections to each other and contributions to the community continue. Instructions for payments to the fellowship are on a slide during the announcements each week. And while you are considering those gifts to the fellowship, remember each month LCUUF donates 5,000 pesos or more to an organization providing food in our lakeside community. For the month of February, the recipient is Food Bank Lakeside. Food Bank Lakeside is currently collecting and distributing foods to the needy families while respecting social distancing with an emphasis on those families who have lost their income due to the economic downturn caused by COVID-19. When you pledge, please donate something for Share the Basket, or as you would put pesos in our physical basket. You can donate in the same way you pay your pledge, just designate Share the Basket. Your offerings are gratefully received. Today, speakers will offer you a brief glance into Black UU history with its struggles and challenges like most religions. Of the over 1,000 Black UU contributions throughout history, Trudy, Kat, and Sue will focus on 3 people from our Black UU past. Kathy will focus on 2 ladies stepping up to our Black UU future and are currently contributing to that future. Our presentations begin.
I want to talk today about a truly exceptional man, Louis Latimer, who was essential to the invention of the light bulb and the telephone. Latimer was the son of escaped slaves, and he helped found the Unitarian Church in the New York borough of Queens. Pretty special, don't you think? Latimer grew up in Boston, and his family moved from house to house to elude slave catchers. He only attended grammar school before going to work in his father's barber shop. In 1842, his father was arrested as an escaped slave and imprisoned. This inspired Boston's abolitionists to their first political action. They created a human wall around the jail so that he could not be returned. They also paid for his freedom. I like to think that there were many Unitarians in that human wall. Latimer got a job in a patent law firm where he studied the draftsmen who turned client sketches into drawings for their patent claims. He bought his own tools and practiced at night. In 11 years at the firm, he rose to head draftsman. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell asked Latimer to help him apply for a patent. Bell knew others were working on devices to transmit human voices over electrical wires, and he was in a race to secure a patent. Bell and Latimer worked furiously on Bell's application, and just 4 hours after the patent was approved, another inventor submitted his own plans, but Latimer and Bell won that race. Latimer's most significant contribution was making the light bulb practical and affordable. In 1879, Thomas Edison received the patent for the light bulb. However, the paper filament in his bulb lasted only a few days. After hundreds of experiments, Latimer developed long-lasting and inexpensive carbon filaments. He also improved almost every component and step in light bulb production: a threaded socket, the oven, switches, and glass blowing equipment. a new switch. He also oversaw the installation of public lighting systems in New York, Philadelphia, Montreal, and London. Latimer's creativity extended far beyond electricity. Among inventions he patented himself were a forerunner of the air conditioner and a locking coat rack. He played the flute and violin. He wrote a book of poetry and a play that was produced. Even his book about incandescent lighting shows his poetic side. Light the light of the sun. It beautifies all things on which it shines and is no less welcome in the palace than in the humblest home. Latimer insisted on full citizenship and integration of African Americans into society. He bought a large house in the mostly white borough of Queens, also the borough where he who should not be named grew up, which is now a museum in his honor. And in 1908, he helped found what is now the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Queens, where his portrait hangs in the sanctuary. This is a man who truly deserves our respect and admiration, and even a little pride.
Lift Every Voice and Sing was first performed in public in Jacksonville, Florida, as part of a celebration of Lincoln's birthday on February 12, 1900, by a choir of 500 school children at the segregated Stanton School, where James Wooden Johnson was principal. Singing this song quickly became a way for African Americans to demonstrate their patriotism and hope for the future. In calling for earth and heaven to ring with the harmonies of liberty, they could speak out subtly against racism and Jim Crow laws, and especially the huge number of lynchings accompanying the rise of the Ku Klux Klan at the turn of the century. In 1919, the NAACP adopted the song as the Negro National Anthem. By the 1920s, copies of Lift Every Voice and Sing could be found in black churches across the country, often passed into the hymnals. In 1939, Augustus Savage received a commission from the World's Fair and created a 16-foot-tall plaster sculpture called Lift Every Voice and Sing. Savage did not have any funds for a bronze cast, or even to move and store it, and it was destroyed by bulldozers at the close of the fair. During and after the American Civil Rights Movement, the song experienced a rebirth, and by the 1970s was often sung immediately after the Star-Spangled Banner at public events and performances across the United States, where the event had a significant African American population. In 1990, singer Melba Moore released a modern rendition of the song, which she recorded along with others including R&B artists Anita Baker, Stephanie Mills, Dionne Warwick, Bobby Brown, Stevie Wonder, Jeffrey Osborne, and Howard Hewitt, and gospel artists BB and CeCe Winans, Take Six, and the Clark Sisters. Partially because of the success of this recording, Lift Every Voice and Sing was entered into the Congressional Record as the official African American national hymn.
Good morning. I first met Frances Ellen Watkins Harper last summer when I did a talk for this church on the suffragettes. I was immediately drawn to her as she was involved in many of the issues that I am interested in. Frances Harper was born in 1825, the same year the American Unitarian Association was founded. She was born to free black parents in the slave state of Maryland. Frances's mother died 3 years later and her father shortly thereafter. She was sent to live with an uncle, Reverend William J. Watkins, an American Methodist Episcopal minister who advocated the issues that would shape the life of his niece. At age 13, Frances was sent to a family to work as a seamstress. The family owned a bookstore, and Frances took advantage of this in her free time. She was on her way to becoming a prolific writer. At 21, she published her first book of poems. Think about what this was like for a woman of color in 1846. Frances's life would cover before the Civil War, during the Civil War, emancipation, and post-Reconstruction. During this period, her writings and speeches would advocate for abolition, emancipation, temperance, public education, and women's suffrage. These were the issues of the day for the middle 1800s. Many of them were still fighting for on this day. Frances's writing illustrated the necessity of literacy among blacks. Before emancipation, most could not read or write, and there were great penalties for doing so. Frances often served as a correspondent for anti-slavery newspapers. As I found in reading about many of these women of color, popular newspapers did not carry articles about slavery nor about any of the issues important to people of color at that time. Frances was a powerful orator as well. She drew serious crowds, well up to 600. She shared the stage with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, as well as Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, William L. Garrison, and Unitarian Lydia Maria Child, as well as other prominent orators. She often said to her white colleagues, "You speak of rights, I speak of wrongs." She was a founder of the National Association of Colored Women. Frances Harper maintained membership in both the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia and the Bethel AME Church. Many people of color operated in this fashion to keep their ties to the black community. Frances's life shows us how free black women use literacy, one of the privileges of their class, to write and speak about issues of freedom and justice. Although they were speaking to a black audience, they were also illustrating for whites the evils of slavery. On June 15th, 2020, a statue on the grounds of the state capitol of Pennsylvania was dedicated to commemorate the 150th and 100th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This statute was the first in the nation to honor the expansion of voting rights. The figures on the statute include William Howard Day, Thomas Morris Chester, Jacob T. Compton, and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. They were all famed orators of color with ties to this region and Pennsylvania, who helped to advance the promise that all men are created equal.
Lift every voice and of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory. Let us march on till victory is won.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about Lewis Allen McGee. Lewis McGee was the son of a former slave and a Methodist Episcopal minister. He was born in 1893 in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and he was ordained an African Methodist Episcopal Church in 1915 at age 22. He served with other black soldiers as an army chaplain in World War I. And after the war, he served small African Methodist Episcopal congregations in West Virginia and Ohio. During his time as an AME minister, McGee began questioning the doctrines of his church. He believed that human beings, not God, had to do the work of solving human problems, including bringing justice and equality to black people. He joined the American Humanist Association and was a member and leader in the organization for many years. I'd like to read part of the American Humanist Association's mission statement. I quote from their webpage: "Humanists are naturally committed to social justice as a prerequisite to peace and happiness for the greatest number, and see it as a moral failing to stand by while others are denied their civil and human rights. Humanistic social justice advocacy involves respect for the equality of all people, compassion for their dignity and welfare, and a conviction that positive change requires human intervention." Reverend McGee discovered Unitarianism by reading a Unitarian magazine he found while working delivering mail. He found that his strongest calling was as a humanist Unitarian. However, at that time, Unitarian congregations, overwhelmingly made up of white people, would not accept a black minister. If he became a Unitarian, he knew that he would have to gather his own congregation. During World War II, he served a black engineers battalion as an Army chaplain for the second time. And during his military career, McGee served as chairman in the American Legion and a master in the Masonic Lodge. In 1945, when he was discharged from the military, he acted on his beliefs and entered Meadville Lombard Theological School, receiving his doctoral degree in 1949 and becoming one of the first African-American ministers of the Unitarian Church. After graduation, Lewis and his wife Marcella founded the Free Religious Fellowship of the Unitarian Church on Chicago's South Side, and began to gather a congregation of mostly black members. The congregation grew to around 100 members, and he served there as minister from 1948 to 1953. This fellowship remains on Chicago's South Side. Now named All Souls Free Religious Fellowship, and it still serves a small, mostly black congregation. After a few years in his church in Chicago, McGee was ready for a new challenge. He preached for the Unitarians in Flint, Michigan in early 1957, but did not get the votes necessary to be called as a minister to that church. Although there were 5 black families in the congregation, some white members felt they weren't ready for a black minister. 2 years later, McGee became the assistant minister at First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles, one of 2 black ministers called to the church to minister to the largely white congregations that year. Finally, in 1961, the year of Unitarian and Universalist consolidation, at the age of 68, and 40 years after he decided that he wanted to be a Unitarian minister, McGee became the minister of the Chico Unitarian Fellowship in Chico, California. He was the first black man called as the senior minister of a mostly white Unitarian church. After serving in Chico, he went on to serve integrated Unitarian Universalist congregations in Springfield, Ohio, Los Angeles, Anaheim, and Pasadena, California. He retired in 1967 and died in 1979 when he was 85 years old. In the spring of 2000, nearly 60 years after McGee's achievement, John Burens, president of the UUA, referred to McGee when talking about the job of leading Unitarian Universalists towards anti-racism, saying that every minister of color entering a denomination where most power and privilege is still held by whites is taking a risk. And now, me, Kat Barnett, speaking again, Reverend Louis McGee was a person who knew who he wanted to be, knew how hard his road would be, but still risked and experienced rejection and disappointment many times to work towards wholeness for human beings as a Unitarian Universalist minister.
just encourage you. We're going to take you to church later. Let's go. We'll keep marching right until the victory is won. To all my brothers out there. Hold your head up, brother, till the victory is won. To all my sisters in the struggle. Keep believing, sister, till the victory is won. Till that day. Till that day comes. Hey. Let us march on. To victory. Till victory is won.
My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style. Although she is not a UU, I wanted to open with the words of this amazing Black woman poet, Maya Angelou. Today, I'm going to speak about two present-day UU women who helped raise awareness and formed the BLUU. Leslie Mack and Lena Gardner. In July of 2015, a group of Black Unitarian Universalists met at the Movement for Black Lives, convening in Cleveland, Ohio, and formed a new organization, the Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism Organizing Collective, Black Lives UU, or BLUU. While this group, which included Leslie Mack and Lena Gardner, both activists in the movement for Black Lives, did not set out for Cleveland to create a new organization or faith community, that is exactly what they did. Drawing from the 7 principles of the broader UU movement, as well as the ideology of the Black Lives Matter movement, Black Lives UU developed its own 7 principles, including all Black Lives Matter, love and self-love is practiced in every element of all we do, and spiritual growth is directly tied to our ability to embrace our whole selves. The group grew quickly and engaged in effective fundraising that allowed it to bring over 200 Black Unitarian Universalists to the UUA General Assembly in 2017, a record for Black attendance at annual meetings. It likewise boasts a vibrant social media presence that has made the organization the go-to space for Black UUs around the country and around the world to share ideas, support one another, and build community. Just as BUUC aimed to wed the political principles of Black power with the theology of Unitarian Universalism, so too has BLUU endeavored to bring together the politics of the broader movement for Black lives with the religious ideas of the denomination. Indeed, for the current leaders of BLU Organizing Collective, including Lena Gardner, Takia Nur Amin, and Mikhail Slack, there is no sharp distinction between their faith and politics. If Unitarian Universalists proclaim the inherent worth and dignity of every person as the first of their 7 principles, then leaders of BLUU would argue that members of the denomination should be advocates for Black Lives Matter, both as a movement and as a political ideology. Additionally, BLUU has become a spiritual resource and home for BLM activists who are wary of traditional Black churches. Rather than show up and pass out church flyers at activist gatherings and events, BLUU leaders show up, take part, and help fund these events. Activities that provide a powerful example of faith in action for activists suspicious of faith leaders. BLUU has thus built on the powerful historical legacy of its predecessors in the denomination while creating something entirely new, a community of Black religious liberals with the funding to control their own organization and the drive to improve the lives of those on the margins, especially Black women and LGBTQ identified individuals. Probably the main driving force behind the founding of BLUU was Leslie Mack. Leslie McFadden, known professionally as Leslie Mack, is a Jamaican-American activist and community organizer. Her work is dedicated to Black lives and liberation. She founded the Ferguson Response Network as a means of connecting activists nationwide. Leslie helped organize multiple high-profile national actions and events, including the National Movement of Silence in Philadelphia, the Movement for Black Lives Convening, and the Women's Federation Freedom Conference. Her overall focus as an organizer is to provide both resources and structural support for Black women organizers around the world. She speaks nationally about the intersection of social media and social justice, as well as facilitating workshops on dismantling institutional white supremacy. Mack notes that she ended up leaving her UU church because, quote, the more Black liberation work I was doing, the less inviting the church became to me, unquote. Mack was surprised and excited to find a number of other Black Unitarian Universalists present at the Movement for Black Lives convention, and they shared similar experiences with her. When she attended a lunch in Cleveland for the BLM movement, she met Lena Gardner, who shared her vision, and the two of them went on to form BLUU. Lena Gardner was another driving force behind the founding of BLUU and reflects well the dual goals of providing space for Black UUs while also helping forward the movement for Black lives. Lena Gardner, who would become the executive director of BLUU, expressed a similar sentiment, noting, quote, as soon as I started doing that work, it became every time I go into church, somebody wants to confront me, somebody wants to ask me or tell me what I should do or shouldn't be doing, and it stopped being a safe place for me, unquote. Lena Gardner is a queer Black woman and is one of the co-founders and leaders of the Black Lives Matter Minneapolis chapter. She works for the UU Church of the Larger Fellowship and is a part of the founding leaders of BLUU. Gardner's religious upbringing was decidedly non-institutional, largely because of her grandfather, a conservative Baptist preacher, who espoused a theology where, quote, women were evil, dancing was evil, everything was evil, and everybody was going to hell, unquote. Her father, traumatized by this early church experience, tried to shield her from that and introduced her to spirituality and God as sort of in nature and also in community, and sort of to be really honoring the divine in every person and every individual. Values that would mesh well with Unitarian Universalism, which she was introduced to shortly before starting a master's degree program in Justice and Peace Studies at the United Theological Seminary in Minnesota. Even as she was drawn to the faith and its theology, she still struggled with the demographics of the congregation and the denomination, both of which were overwhelmingly white. Nevertheless, Gardner posits, quote, there are no open and affirming Black churches in Minneapolis, and identifying as a queer person, I just made a choice. I would rather put up with racism and whiteness at the UU congregation than the patriarchy and the homophobia at the Black churches around here, unquote. Gardner's experience at the First Universalist Church of Minneapolis would end up being similar to Leslie Mack's and would propel her to take a leading role in Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism. Like Leslie Mack, that lunch that she attended at the BLM convention in Cleveland with other Black UUs was eye-opening and raised an important question that remains a central one for BLUU. How can we make a home that is unapologetically Black and makes room for a diversity of Black experiences, perspectives, and viewpoints, and is also theologically UU? This question led Gardner, Mack, and others to found the BLUU movement in August of 2015. Quote, we started it by putting our UU principles through the lens of Blackness. That means our first principle was Black Lives Matter, unquote. Along with providing pastoral and spiritual care to Black UUs, BLUU was explicitly created to forward the movement for Black lives. Lena Gardner notes that the goal is the one area where all of us are very aligned. We must be working as part of a broader movement for Black lives and, You know, that's very important to us, and in solidarity with other movements for justice. One way they do this is by showing up and being there for protests, demonstrations, and other activities that are part of the movement. Another way is by using their funds to support people and organizations in need. BLU leaders note that in addition to being influenced by Black Lives Matter, they are in turn trying to shape the movement. As Leslie Mack claims, quote, this belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, when you put that in the context of Black liberation, that means that all Black people have to be considered when you're organizing, when you're planning, when you're thinking of what you're going to do, unquote. Showing up and actively contributing to the movement for Black lives is BLUU's indirect way of proselytizing and growing its membership. Leslie Mack expressed a similar sentiment, noting, we have so many people that we lovingly refer to as BLUU adjacent. So they're not technically UUs, but they continually come to our events. They come to our spaces. They connect with us. And I think they see us living out our faith in a way that's in alignment with the cause of Black liberation, and it speaks to them. An ultimate goal of this approach is for BLUU to become the spiritual home of activists in the movement for Black lives. While many of these activists are wary of traditional religious institutions, BLUU's leadership, which consists predominantly of queer-identified and trans individuals, is not just open and affirming towards those groups, but actually reflects much of its leadership, many of whom also identify in similar ways. As Takia Nuramin says, quote, in my dreams, Unitarian Universalism could become the faith of the future for those of us who are committed to justice and liberation, unquote. In just a few short years, BLUU has become an incredibly dynamic religious movement and represents another powerful example of the way that Black Lives Matter has and is the process of shaping the contours of African American thought and culture. Lena's vision and gift for creating deep relationships has fostered a movement for racial justice that has space for LGBTQ people, people of faith, and their allies. Lena draws connections and parallels between racial, economic, gender, and sexuality oppression that allows communities to come together to demand change. Lena is the first to proclaim that her passion for justice is rooted in her deep belief and experience, that she is held by a profound love and by ancestors who whisper in her ear. She talks about this more in detail in her book, The Hope of Our Ancestors. Every day in our world, people are feeling vulnerable, frightened, and heartbroken. For those of us who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, the effects of racism and oppression are an everyday lived reality, and these feelings are not new. For others, this can be a time of hard awakening to the realities that have existed for a long time, and to new and heightened racial violence and policies targeting the most vulnerable. For all of us, the call of this moment is real. And as Unitarian Universalists, we are invited and challenged every day to live more deeply into our faith. And every day, our people, our congregations, you, are responding to that invitation. We are learning to live with the vision of the beloved community in the face of white supremacy and fear. We are learning to confront these things in our own hearts, lives, and congregations. If we as UUs are going to be ready to meet the challenge and accept our invitation to build a new way, we must do it together. We know, as June Jordan said, quote, we are the ones that we have been waiting for, unquote. Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism is one of the most exciting ways our faith is answering this call. As a national ministry for and by Black identified Unitarian Universalists, BLUU embodies a liberating community of all ages, a community that lifts up the lives and stories and leadership of those who have been marginalized and silenced, a community that brings hope when hope is hard to find, and a community that calls us to wrestle with the gap between our theology and our practice in the world. The power and promise of Unitarian Universalism is waking up to meet fear and hate with radical imagination, transformative partnership, resilience, and joy. I want to close with the words of another amazing Black woman poet, Amanda Gorman. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Let us extinguish our chalice with these words that we read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world. Our closing words are quotes from various artists. We create our future well by improving present opportunities, however few and small they may be. That was by Lewis Howard Latimer. White folks, when racism happens in public, your silence is violence. Leslie Mack. We are bound together in this great bundle of humanity and society, cannot hamper on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse its own soul. And that was by Francis Hopper. Ignorance aligned with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. James Baldwin. Hate. It has caused a lot of problems in the world, but it has not solved one yet. Maya Angelou. Unite, riot, lead, resist, rise, compute, illustrate, enlighten, engage. Anonymous. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Jimi Hendrix. Resistance is what love looks like in the face of hate. Resistance is what love looks like in the face of violence. Reverend William Sinkford. Now for our postlude.